She filled 47 notebooks in 3 years, not with words, with drawings. Precise, intricate, obsessive drawings of things she had never seen and could never explain. Circles within circles. Lines connecting points of light across vast, empty spaces. Geometric patterns so complex they made mathematicians lean forward in their chairs and go quiet. Symbols that looked like no known language but followed rules. Rules that linguists could feel underneath them like a grammar made of light instead of sound. Lydia drew them in the middle of the night when she couldn't sleep. Drew them during meetings at work when her hand just started moving, and she looked down 10 minutes later, and the page was full of something that had nothing to do with quarterly reports. Drew them in the margins of grocery lists, and on napkins at restaurants, and on the back of her hand with whatever pen was closest. She couldn't stop, couldn't control it, and she had absolutely no idea what any of it meant until Dr. Reeves put her under hypnosis and asked her to go back to the first time her hand moved on its own. And what she found wasn't a psychological compulsion, it was a map. A map of something so enormous and so old that the paper she drew it on felt almost insulting. And the reason she was drawing it was because she was the only soul alive who remembered where it led. The studio where Dr. Reeves conducted her sessions was different from most therapy offices. No sterile white walls, no calming bay. The walls were covered in art. Pieces she'd collected over years from clients who created things during or after their regressions. Things that seemed to come from somewhere other than their own conscious minds. Paintings of landscapes that didn't exist on Earth. Sculptures of shapes that followed mathematical rules that hadn't been formally discovered yet. And in one corner, pinned to a corkboard that took up an entire wall, dozens of pages from Lydia's notebooks, because Lydia had brought them all, every single one. Spread them out on the floor of Dr. Reeves' office before the session even started, and stood in the middle of them looking lost and desperate and slightly mad, the way people look when something has been happening to them that they couldn't explain, and couldn't make stop, and couldn't ignore. Dr. Reeves had seen automatic writing before, had seen clients produce drawings and symbols during hypnotic states that seemed to bypass their conscious mind entirely. But she had never seen anything on this scale. The quantity alone was staggering. 47 notebooks filled front to back with markings that ranged from simple geometric shapes to patterns of such complexity that they seemed to contain layers, dimensions folding in on each other like origami made of starlight. And when Dr. Reeves looked at them, really looked, not as a therapist assessing a client's mental state, but as someone genuinely curious about what she was seeing, she felt something move in her chest. A recognition. Something deep and old, responding to the patterns the way a plant responds to sunlight. Not understanding, responding, as if some part of her consciousness already knew these shapes and had been waiting to see them again. She asked Lydia to sit, to breathe, to let herself be guided down into the space where the drawing happened. The space her hand accessed when it moved without her telling it to. Lydia went under with a resistance that Dr. Reeves could feel, a part of her consciousness that didn't want to go back to wherever this was coming from, that had been trying to stay on the surface, trying to keep things normal and explicable. But the pull was stronger than the resistance, and within minutes, Lydia was deeper than most clients went, in a state that felt less like hypnosis and more like remembering, like a door that had been locked for a very long time was slowly, inevitably opening. "Where are you, Lydia?" Dr. Reeves asked, keeping her voice neutral, not wanting to lead or suggest or shape whatever was about to emerge. And Lydia's answer came in a voice that sounded nothing like the nervous woman who had spread her notebooks across the floor. It was clear and calm, and carried an authority that felt ancient. "I'm in the dark, but it's not empty dark. It's full, dense with information. Like being inside a library where the books are made of light and the shelves are made of space itself. And I can read it. I can feel the information moving through me. Not words, not images exactly. More like knowing, direct knowing. The way you know your own name without having to think about it." Dr. Reeves asked what she was reading, what information was flowing through her, and Lydia's face began to change, began to carry an expression of wonder so deep it looked almost like pain. "I'm reading the structure, the architecture of everything, how it's connected, how it all fits together. Stars and planets and dimensions and frequencies and the spaces between them, it's all one thing, all one system. And I can see the pattern that connects all of it, the pattern that makes the whole thing work, and it's beautiful. It's so beautiful it hurts to look at." The first layer of the mystery was revealing itself now, the question of what exactly Lydia was accessing transforming from a psychological puzzle into something that felt much larger and much stranger than anything Dr. Reeves had encountered in 15 years of regression work. She asked Lydia to describe the pattern, to put into words what her consciousness was perceiving, and the response came slowly, carefully, like someone trying to pour an ocean into a teacup. It's a map, not a map of one place, a map of all places, of how they relate to each other, of how consciousness moves between them, how souls travel, how information flows, how the universe communicates with itself across distances that humans can't even imagine. And I know this map, I've seen it before. I've drawn it before. Not in this life. In another one. A life where this was my purpose, my function. To hold this map, to remember it, to draw it when the time came to share it. Dr. Reeves felt the hair on her arms standing up, felt something electric running through the room that had nothing to do with the building's wiring. She looked at the pages pinned to the wall, the 47 notebooks worth of drawings that Lydia had been producing for 3 years, without understanding what they were, and saw them differently now. Not as symptoms of a psychological condition, as output, as something being transmitted through Lydia's hand from a source that existed outside her normal conscious awareness, a map being drawn, a pattern being recorded, an ancient piece of information finding its way back into physical form through the only vessel capable of receiving it. She asked Lydia to go back further to find the life where she first learned this map, where she first understood the structure of the universe well enough to encode it into a form that could be drawn on paper. Lydia's body shifted in the chair, not physically moving but something changing in the way she occupied it, like she was becoming someone else, or rather, like she was remembering being someone else so vividly that the present version of herself temporarily stepped aside. I'm in a place that's very old. Not a building exactly, more like a convergence point. A place where different streams of consciousness meet and exchange information. And I'm not alone here. There are others who can see the map the way I can see it, others who carry different pieces of it. We're all here to assemble the whole thing, to put the pieces together and understand the complete structure. She described the others with a tenderness that suggested deep familiarity, souls she'd known across multiple incarnations, souls who carried complementary pieces of knowledge that fit together with hers the way puzzle pieces fit the way instruments in an orchestra play. Different notes that together create something none of them could create alone. One carried the knowledge of how dimensions connect. Another carried the understanding of how time moves through the structure. Another held the mathematics that governed the relationships between points in the map. And Lydia carried the visual representation, the actual shape of the whole thing. The picture that made the abstract relationships concrete and visible and communicable. They worked together in that space, these souls, with their complementary knowledge, assembling the map, piece by piece, and Lydia described the process of receiving the visual information with a reverence that made it clear this wasn't just intellectual exercise. It was something sacred in the deepest sense of that word. Something that mattered not just to her or to the others in that convergence point, but to the consciousness of the universe itself, which needed to be understood, needed to be known, needed someone to look at its structure and see it clearly and hold that seeing and carry it forward into the incarnated world, where most souls could unperceive it directly. Dr. Reeves asked what happened to that map, what became of it, whether it was preserved somewhere or whether it existed only in the memories of the souls who deassembled it. Lydia went quiet for a long time, her face cycling through expressions too fast to read individually, and when she spoke again there was something heavy in her voice. Something had gone wrong, not with the map itself. The map was perfect, complete, a flawless representation of how the universe was structured, how consciousness moved through it, how everything connected to everything else. What went wrong was the transmission, the process of getting it from that convergence point into a form that incarnated souls could access and understand. Someone had to carry it. Someone had to incarnate with the map embedded in their consciousness, and find a way to express it in physical form, through drawing or writing or music or mathematics or whatever medium could hold that much information without collapsing under the weight of it. And the soul who volunteered for that task had been Lydia. In that life, in that ancient incarnation, she had been the one to take the map with her when she incarnated, to carry it in her consciousness like a seed carries the blueprint of the tree it will become, to wait for the right moment in the right lifetime to begin expressing it in a form that others could perceive. But something happened during the transition, something that disrupted the clean transmission of information from consciousness into expression. She incarnated, but the map came with her in fragments. broken pieces of the whole scattered across multiple lifetimes, emerging in bits and fragments, never quite assembling itself completely in any single life, always partial, always incomplete, always just enough to make the soul feel like something was missing, but not enough to understand what that something was. That's what the notebooks were. Not random, compulsive drawings, fragments, pieces of the map trying to reassemble themselves through Lydia's hand across 3 years of relentless output. The universe, or the map itself, or whatever force governed the transmission of information from consciousness into form, was trying to complete the pattern, was using Lydia's hand as the instrument, was drawing itself back together piece by piece through a woman who had no conscious understanding of what was happening, but whose subconscious had been working on the project nonstop since the day she was born. Dr. Reeves looked at the wall of drawings again, at the pages and pages of intricate patterns that she had initially seen as evidence of an obsessive compulsion, and felt something shift in her understanding that was hard to articulate. These weren't symptoms, they were the map, and it was almost complete. The 47 notebooks, if you laid them out in the right order, if you found the sequence that connected each drawing to the next, the way the pieces of a puzzle connect, would form a single coherent image, a single complete picture of how everything in the universe fit together. She asked Lydia if she could see the sequence now, if she could feel the order in which the drawings should be arranged, and Lydia's face lit up with something that looked like sudden recognition, like a key fitting into a lock that had been waiting for it for years. Yes, I can feel it. It's been there the whole time, the order, the sequence. I just couldn't see it because I was too close to it, too inside it. Each drawing felt separate when I was making them, but now, from here, from this place where I can see the whole thing, I can see how they connect, how each one leads to the next, how together they make something complete. And then she saw something else. Something that made her breath catch and her hands grip the armrests of the chair with sudden intensity. Dr. Reeves noticed the shift, the way Lydia's energy changed from calm revelation to urgent discovery, and asked what she was seeing. Lydia's voice came out fast, almost breathless, like she was trying to get the words out before the vision faded. The map isn't finished. Even with all 47 notebooks, even with everything I've drawn so far, there are pieces still missing, pieces that haven't come through yet. And I know why, because they don't come from me, they come from the others, the ones who carried the other pieces, the ones who were in that convergence point with me, the souls who held the mathematics and the dimensional connections and the understanding of how time moves through the structure. They're here too, they're alive right now, on this planet, in this lifetime, and they've been drawing too, writing too, creating too, each of them producing their own fragments of the complete map without knowing what the fragments are or why they couldn't stop making them. The room felt charged in a way that Dr. Reeves had never experienced during a session. Not just the energy of a significant revelation, but something larger, something that felt like information wanting to be known, like a pattern wanting to be completed, like the universe itself leaning in to witness the moment when someone finally saw the whole picture. She asked Lydia if she could identify the others, if she could feel them, could sense who they were and where they were. And Lydia's face went through something complex before settling into an expression of absolute certainty. One of them is a mathematician in Japan. I can feel her working, feel her writing equations that look like gibberish to everyone around her, but are actually the mathematical framework that holds the map together. She's been doing it for years, filling pages with numbers that do uncorrespond to any known system, but follow rules that are internally consistent and perfectly logical, if you know what they're describing. Another is a composer in Brazil. A young man. He writes music that sounds strange, dissonant, unsettling to most listeners, but carries frequencies that are literally the map translated into sound. He doesn't know what he's composing. His hand just moves. His fingers just play. And what comes out is the auditory version of what I've been drawing on paper. She described more of them, scattered across the globe, each one producing fragments of the same enormous pattern in different mediums, different languages, different forms of expression. None of them aware that what they were creating was connected to what the others were creating. None of them understanding that their individual output was one piece of something that required all the pieces to be meaningful. A painter in Iceland whose canvases were landscapes of impossible geometry. A child in Nigeria who built structures out of whatever material was available. Structures that followed architectural principles no one had taught her, principles that corresponded to the spatial relationships encoded in the map. A poet in South Korea whose verses sounded like nonsense on the surface, but contained patterns that, if you analyzed them deeply enough, revealed the same mathematical relationships the Japanese mathematician was encoding in her equations. Dr. Reeves felt something happening in the room that she couldn't fully account for, a pressure, a density, like the air was thickening with information, like the map itself was somehow present, somehow manifesting in the space around them, drawn there by Lydia's consciousness touching it so directly and so completely. She asked the question that had been forming in her mind since the middle of the session. The question that she suspected was the real reason Lydia had come. Why now? Why is the map trying to complete itself now? Why are all these souls producing their fragments at the same time? What's changed? Lydia's answer came with a weight that made everything else she'd said feel like preamble. Because it's needed now, the way it wasn't needed before. Something is shifting in the collective consciousness of this planet. Something is changing in how humans understand themselves and their place in the universe. And the map, the complete map, all the pieces together, is part of what's needed for that shift to happen. It's not information for information's sake. It's not an academic exercise or a curiosity or a piece of cosmic trivia. It's a tool, a navigational tool, a way for consciousness to understand where it is and where it's going and how to get there. And without it, without the complete picture, the shift can't fully happen. The transition can't complete itself. The next phase of human evolution is waiting for this map, the way a traveler waits for a compass. The emotional weight of what Lydia was describing settled into the room like sediment settling into still water. Dr. Reeves understood now why Lydia had been so desperate when she arrived, why she'd spread all 47 notebooks across the floor with shaking hands and looked at Dr. Reeves like she was the last person on earth who might be able to help. It wasn't that the drawing frightened her, though it had. It wasn't that she thought she was going crazy, though she had wondered. It was that some part of her knew, had always known, that what was coming through her hand was important, was urgent, was connected to something so much bigger than her individual life that the weight of it was crushing her, and she needed someone to help her understand what it was before it consumed her entirely. Dr. Reeves asked her to look at the map one more time, to see it whole, to hold the complete picture in her consciousness, the way she held it in that ancient convergence point before she incarnated, and Lydia's face went very still, very calm, like someone looking at something so beautiful it silences everything else. I see it. I see the whole thing, not just my pieces, all of it. The mathematical framework and the dimensional connections and the temporal pathways and the visual structure, all of it together. And it's not complicated the way it seems from the outside. It's actually simple, elegantly, heartbreakingly simple. It's just us. Just consciousness. Just awareness looking at itself from every possible angle and every possible distance and every possible configuration. That's what the map shows. Not the structure of the universe, the structure of awareness itself, how it moves, how it sees, how it knows itself. She opened her eyes slowly, like someone surfacing from deep water, and the first thing she did was look at the wall of drawings, really look at them, not the way she usually looked at them, with frustration and confusion, and the slightly desperate quality of someone trying to make sense of something that would uncooperate. She looked at them with recognition, with understanding, with the calm certainty of someone who could finally see the pattern that had been hiding in plain sight for 3 years. And she smiled. A small, quiet smile that Dr. Reeves had never seen on her face before. A smile that suggested something had clicked into place that had been rattling loose for a very long time. I know what to do now, Lydia said. Not in a dramatic way. Not with urgency or grandiosity. Just a quiet statement of fact. The way you'd say, I know where I left my keys. I need to find the others. The ones who are drawing and writing and composing and building. I need to find them and show them what their pieces are part of. And we need to put them together, not because someone told us to, because it's time, because the map is almost complete and it wants to be complete and we read the only ones who can finish it. Dr. Reeves watched Lydia leave that day and then sat alone in her studio for a long time, looking at the drawings on the wall, trying to see what Lydia had seen, the pattern, the connections, the way each piece related to every other piece. She couldn't see it the way Lydia could. Did you have the consciousness that had been trained in that convergence point to perceive the structure of reality as a unified whole, but she could feel it. could feel the coherence underneath the apparent chaos, could sense the map the way you sense the shape of a room in the dark, not seeing it but knowing it was there, knowing it had edges and dimensions and a logic that made sense if you could just find the right way to perceive it. Lydia contacted the mathematician in Japan 6 weeks later, found her through a series of connections that felt too precise to be coincidence, each one leading to the next with a certainty that suggested the map itself was guiding the search. When they spoke for the first time, on a video call at 2 in the morning, because of the time difference, the mathematician cried. Had been crying, she said, for years. Had been filling notebooks with equations she couldn't explain and couldn't stop writing, and had been terrified, genuinely terrified, that she was losing her mind. And Lydia sent her one page, one drawing, a single piece of the map. And the mathematician looked at it for a long time without speaking, and then she said in a voice that was barely audible over the connection, "I've been writing the numbers that describe this. I've been writing the mathematics of this exact shape for 2 years, without knowing what the shape was." The composer in Brazil was next. Then the painter in Iceland. Then the child in Nigeria, whose mother agreed to let Lydia visit when she understood what was happening, though understanding was perhaps too strong a word for what any of them fully grasped at that point. Each connection felt the same. Each reunion carried the same quality of recognition, of relief, of something long separated finally being brought back together. And each time a new piece was added to the collection, each time another fragment of the map joined the others, the picture got clearer, more complete, more coherent, more like the thing it was always meant to be. Dr. Reeves kept in contact with Lydia throughout the process, not as a therapist anymore, but as something closer to a witness. Someone who was watching something unfold that was bigger than any individual life, bigger than any single regression session, bigger than anything she had encountered in 15 years of working with consciousness. She didn't fully understand what the map was, or what it would ultimately do, or how it fit into the larger story of human evolution and collective consciousness, and the shifting frequencies that so many people were sensing but so few could articulate. But she understood that it mattered. Understood it the way you understand that the sun matters without needing a degree in astrophysics. Deeply, fundamentally, in the place where knowing lives before it becomes knowledge. Sometimes the things we create without understanding why we're recreating them are the most important things we ever make. The drawings that won't stop coming, the music that pours out of us in the middle of the night, the words that fill pages before we can think about whether they make sense, the structures we build, the patterns we weave, the shapes we trace in the air with our fingers when we think no one is watching. These aren't random. These aren't symptoms of a mind misfiring or a nervous system seeking stimulation. They're transmissions, information finding its way back into the physical world through the only channels available to it, which are us, our hands, our voices, our creative impulses, the part of us that does unfilter or censor or question but just receives and expresses and passes along what it receives. Lydia is 38 now. She still draws, still fills notebooks, though the quality of the drawing has changed since the regression. Become more intentional, more aware. She knows now what she's drawing, knows it's the map, knows it matters. And she's still assembling it, still finding the others, still bringing the pieces together one by one. The map isn't complete yet, may not be complete for years, but it's further along than it's ever been. And the people contributing to it, the mathematician and the composer and the painter and the child and dozens of others who've joined since, they all feel it, feel the momentum, feel the pattern pulling itself toward completion the way a river pulls itself toward the sea. Not because anyone is forcing it, because it wants to arrive. If you've been making things you don't understand, drawing things that don't make sense, writing words that feel like they're coming from somewhere other than your own mind, maybe you're holding a piece of something larger than yourself. Maybe your hand has been moving for a reason you haven't been able to see yet. Maybe the map is closer to being finished than you think. And maybe all that's needed is for you to find the others, the ones who are holding the pieces that fit with yours, the ones who are drawing and writing and creating in the dark, just like you, waiting for someone to show them what their fragment is part of. You're not crazy, you're not broken, you're transmitting, and the universe is listening. There are others who transmit too, others who hold pieces of the same pattern, others who are waiting to be found. The next one starts now.